Hi, I'm Dennis Barry. I defended the Mapplethorpe show in Cincinnati.
Oh,
and
wow.
when we were indicted for obscenity, and it was a big case in 1990. So I'm part of the film tonight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it says you're also the director of the LA
I was the director of the Contemporary Arts Center, and the city brought charges against us for showing Robert's work. So the charge was basically that we were pandering obscenity, and I was charged individually as well as the museum. And so we wound up having a year trial in which we were acquitted, and it was quite the trial. I mean, it made national news, and in fact, it's interesting to be in this film because Showtime did a film on it back in the year 2000. So it's kind of nice to be back here again looking at this documentary.
Yeah, from this vantage point.
Not being really a part, just having a chance to see it from, 20 years ago, and really loving Robert's work and knowing how important it was and how important it was to show the work and not to take it down.
Yeah. I mean, that took a lot of guts.
It took some guts. I mean, it was really a rather scary time because there was a lot of prosecution and persecution around homosexuality, around the whole AIDS crisis, around what museums could show. And we stood tall when a lot of other museums caved. In fact, museums in Washington refused to show the work, and other cities had protests. And so for us to say we're not taking the work down and this is important work and it needs to be seen was good for the country.
My name's Robert Sherman. I'm here because I've been modeling for Robert since 1978. It was 5 years.
How has that changed your life?
Oh. I can't find the words.
I mean, to be part of something that was kind of controversial, but yet very freeing. It looks like it kind of...
Yeah, but those days in New York were all wild, and New York was a dangerous city in those days. So just modeling for a dangerous photographer is just like walking across 42nd Street. Be in museums and stuff.
Never thought that.
The Getty said, how do you like when the foundation gave them all of their property, the Mapplethorpe Foundation? They said, how do you like your home for the next 200 years? That got me, yeah.
So congratulations on the premiere tonight.
Thank you.
What inspired you?
Well, it's been quarter of a century, 25 years since the scandal that made him a national, international name. And so it felt like it was about time to tell the story. And then, of course, Sheila Evans at HBO came to us and said, have a look at Mapplethorpe. And it was like, oh my gosh, no one's done the story since he passed away. So it just felt timing. It's all about timing. It's as Mapplethorpe said, it's the perfect moment.
Yeah, I mean, considering what's going on in the world right now, it's kind of nice to be reminded of someone who took a lot of risks and did some amazing things.
Yeah, a lot of his work is still absolutely relevant, and Mapplethorpe himself talked about why his work was so important. It was important for people to sort of open their minds, and I think that notion is as important and relevant today as it was then.
I mean, that was a crazy, I remember, it was a very painful time.
Right, it was a very painful time, and although someone like Jesse Helms is no longer with us, people like Donald Trump are. So, we face the same kind of challenges we faced way back then, and so that makes his work even more important, especially today.
Thank God AIDS is not what it was back then, but it's good to be reminded.
Right, it's true, to some degree AIDS is under control, but we face additional challenges in terms of bigotry and prejudice and closing our hearts and closing our minds, and what's happening, whether it's the refugee crisis or whether it's terrorism or whether it's Donald Trump. What's happening now is not good. And art is all about, Mapplethorpe himself said this, art is about opening something up, and that's really what we need to be doing at a time like this, rather than closing our minds or closing our borders or closing our hearts.
This is your brother's work, correct?
Yes, it is. I am the youngest of 6 children. Robert was the third, so he was 13, 14 years older than me. So I don't have a lot of recollection of him when I was a child, but ultimately, from time to time, he came back and visited, and I immediately knew that there was something special about him. And certainly when he started visiting with Patti Smith, I hadn't seen anybody carry themselves just the way they did. I mean, this is the 60s, so I mean, you know, they were hippies in some respects. They were rock stars in my eyes, and they were very compelling to me and very intriguing and very inspiring. So as I grew to be a young man and realized that I had a creative bent for my own and learned about photography, it was a dream of mine to sort of get to know my brother better and work with him, and I'm very, very fortunate to say that that happened. I wish there would have been many, many more years that we could have shared together, but you know, he was a very prolific and driven and worked diligently every day, and he was a true artist, and I'm very happy to be here to celebrate this, and for people the general public to see who my brother was and understand his artwork.
I'm here to see this awesome documentary about Robert Mapplethorpe. He has very blunt work, but I do actually like his flower stills. They are beautiful.
You're not old enough to remember when he was around, are you?
No, but I think that's why the documentary is here, is to help you know, the younger audience to really see and get to know who Robert really is. And I think that's, you know, it's a great thing that everyone's here to see that.
I'm one of the producers of the film. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very exciting to be here.
Yeah, I mean, this is like having a baby in a way, you know, it's a creation.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful. I mean, we had great reception in Sundance and Berlin, but this is a really special evening, and to see the two exhibitions, exquisite and very, very different exhibitions at LACMA and the Getty, that's wonderful, you know.
So tell me, are you a fan of Mapplethorpe?
Oh, I'm always a fan of anybody who is avant-garde, who takes risks, who bangs his own drum, who creates his own art, and is a success at it. I mean, he's the quintessential avant-garde artist in this century, I believe, and I think he's somebody that's certainly has to be down in the books.
And I'm here to learn a little bit about Robert Mapplethorpe.
So do you know anything at all about him?
Yes, I watched a small little video on him, and I've seen some of his work. I know he's a controversial photographer, but I'm excited to see more about what he's about.
One moment that was most exciting to you personally? Yeah, absolutely. So you should be taking it to the gym next door, right? There you go. You want to see this buttocks?
The primal instinct of human beings. He also captures the beauty of the human body, in particular the male body. But, you know, human bodies can be beautiful, and he captures that beauty with artistry, using light and shadow and sculpting the form with his camera and with light. So he's a very, very gifted artist.
My name is Neve Schulman, and I'm here for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that as a photographer and fan of the human body, I think Mapplethorpe's photographs obviously speak to me. But interestingly, I also host a television show, or 2 television shows for MTV, that deal a lot with sexuality and honesty and vulnerability. And the new show that I'm working on called Suspect right now, I actually have a non-gender binary co-host who's sort of falls somewhere on the transgender spectrum. And a lot of the issues that we're dealing with have to do with sexuality and opening up and being honest and challenging the norms. And I think that this work has been doing that for a long time and continues to do that now.
Only actually heard about him recently, but now what an interesting story his whole life has been. So I'm really excited to be able to see more depth and everything. All of his pictures will be amazing to see too.
I am here tonight because I'm actually a big fan of Robert's, and I'm a big fan of Patti Smith. So I'm excited to see, his work in this documentary. I'm actually really excited about this. So yeah.
Well, now it seems like you're too young to remember when he was going through all the trials and tribulations. But what turned you on to?
I actually got into Patti Smith through I think I was watching an interview of someone else and they mentioned her, and I kind of looked her up, and because I was a fan of theirs, and I was like, oh, who influences them, and got into her and the fashion, and I read Just Kids, and Easter is one of my favorite albums of all time, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I kind of got into it on my own, just through the internet actually, which is funny. Yeah.
It's kind of wonderful.
Yeah.